Welcome into the C3 Pod presented by Comiccon.com. And of course, we want to thank you guys for joining us with our group of, I don't even know what to call you guys anymore. Because I feel like everyone is like in hiding. I'm not really sure what's going on here. I want to start at the top right corner and bring in and introduce our man, Brett Lawson, who's coming live from the bomb shelter that he's built here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Brett, how are you?
Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little boom tube action. No, man, I'm good. It was kind of a last minute audible, but it actually kind of worked out perfectly because right before we were getting ready to start the recording, we were, kind of talking amongst ourselves. And I said, now, guys know, whether it be Student of the Game, the Gameday Huddle, the various programs we've hosted together, those little factoids, those little bits of useless, trivial information that I always seem to, spew out. This is where most of them are concocted. So this is where really the magic happens, and it's a lot where a lot of other magic doesn't happen. So there you go,
Yeah. Dude, is your camera on an ironing board that you're leaning on? Because that is dizzy making.
And actually, here, I'll adjust it. It's not on an ironing board, but that actually is funny you say that because it was on something slightly wobbly that I didn't notice was wobbly until you mentioned that.
So there you
go. The bunker. Yeah, the bunker is, it's a myriad of things, but happy to be here. Fun weekend of sports action with the NFL back in action. We have another great slate in NFL college football this weekend. Huge fight coming up, so it's a cool time to be in the sports scene in the combat sports scene in Vegas. But the best thing is when we get to nerd out on shows like this on Wednesday morning. So it's kind of cool to be already off and running with show number 2. So I'm excited.
Well, he brought himself in, but we'll go ahead and go to Bakersfield, California next. Mr. Brendan Allen with Comiccon.com. He's out there. Just so you guys know really quick, he was playing with his ET earlier. That's all I'm going to tell you. Okay, he was playing with his ET. Now that, I know how Paul takes that stand. So, because I think Paul believes that ET means something completely different than extraterrestrial. But, nevertheless, Brendan Allen. Brendan, what's going on, man? How are you?
I am good. I'm good. I made it back to the gym this morning because I tested negative for COVID yesterday. So I'm one of those quick healers.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go back and get my ass kicked. And I didn't want to say at the time because I knew that would set me up, but it was a real easy day today. So that worked in my favor. So I didn't have to take breaks and stuff. But, if you say it's an easy day, then the coach wants to totally make you die. So I kept my mouth shut. And yeah.
And then tomorrow, as he gets up, he realizes he rolls halfway over. Ibuprofen is now the moral choice of breakfast. We get that. Speaking of someone who loves ibuprofen, well, I mean, we need to take ibuprofen from time to time. Mr. Twerking Paul Vato has joined us as well. Paul is in Chicago. He apparently is taking residency up in Chicago now. I don't understand the idea behind this, but how are you trying to take dual residencies in just different states? Usually when you do a dual residency, it's an international thing. So are you treating Chicago as a foreign country? I'm not real sure what's going on.
Studying abroad.
Yeah, I love when I get to study abroad. And I did take ET as the extra testicle, so definitely that. But I've got dual residency now in the great state of Illinois, and I still have my residency in Nevada, and I'm just gonna go back and forth. I'm by Midwest coastal, I guess you could say. So I'm gonna spend some
checking
time
the boxes
in Chicago. It was a rough Monday night football. Other than that, it's been going great. I'm setting up my little Parse rum corner here right next to my mother's religious iconography.
You should put a little Jobu up there.
No.
Next to the rum.
No Jobus for you or anybody. Right now. Because Brendan, okay, real quick. You guys know who Jobu is? No. Okay.
No.
From Major League. One of the guys was Dominican.
Gotcha.
And he practiced dark magic or something like that. And he had an idol of Jobu in his locker. Well, the San Francisco Giants put one of them in one of their empty lockers, put a Jobu up. And since they put up Jobu, they've won 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
And their rivals who were keeping them out of the wild card have been losing quite a bit, which one of them is the San Diego Padres. So that's upset Steve quite a bit.
Yeah. What is it? He's gripping the bat. He says, "Oh, JC, I know him. He's very good, but he's not Jobu."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
I
how about
remember now.
Steal
Joe
Jobu
Boo,
rum.
I do
Very
it
bad.
myself.
Very
How
bad.
about that one?
Yeah.
What's the better quote here? All right.
You're telling me our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ doesn't know how to hit a curveball?
But what I will say is that no one needs a Joe Boo. All right. You need less Joe Boo right now because apparently it's working for Brendan's team. And that
Hey, the Giants are like 2 games out of the wild card, which is going to be a wild. So the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Giants. I called it at the beginning of the season that those 3 were all going to the postseason, and it just might happen still.
well, and then you just had is it
said
the
it on the stage.
Mariners jumping the Mariners? No, Mariners are 1 game out.
Yeah.
From the Astros, which Astros have had a grip on that division for a while now. So, but this isn't a sports talk show. It kind of is actually, and the reason being is because we love to get into the action sports, of course, when it has pop culture references and things to do, and no one does that better for us in the world of WWE. And this week, I'll tell you, like, it's funny because I'm a casual WWE guy. I really am. But for some reason, I watch the videos that they post of like the recaps to where it's fed to me in my, my thread now.
They have a hell of an algorithm.
I'll tell you what, I didn't watch it live, but on Sunday, I get a notification of CM Punk getting slapped by Becky Lynch. And, I got to be fair. I think Becky Lynch is playing the man up a little too much. I don't think it's as genuine as it had been in the past because the storyline is really Seth Rollins, right? But her acting a fool like that was the best setup. And I think it will get overlooked when we talk about this just because of the impact. But I will tell you that once Becky really took on this role that she was going to just talk smack and really be that and lead in front of Seth Rollins, because Seth has not been nearly as impactful with his, promos and stuff like he had in the past. But when this got set up and how well CM Punk is playing this, I'm kind of the golden boy again. And look, everyone 6 months ago in the wrestling world was like, is CM Punk going to be the guy? Are they trying to make Ron Breakker it? We know that Cena is on his farewell tour, and he's doing an incredible job with that, by the way, and really personalizing the fans. Like he's building fans for that baseline's been great. But when CM Punk stamps out and says, I won't put hands on a woman, but I do know someone who will. The chills came back because we knew what was about to happen. And that was AJ Lee, after a 10-year time period of not being anything WWE, remakes her appearance in a fashion that blew me away. And there was a conversation that I had with Brendan about it. Was absolutely crazy when they fired up her theme music and the Black Widow hit the screen. I can only imagine what the actual in arena mics sounded like.
That was a hell of a pop.
They had to be erupting because you could feel it through just the video stream, which is very compressed. The microphone's got to be able to talk down. The background noise is cut down. I could only imagine that everybody involved with WWE was like, oh my, because this, I don't know. I argue it's definitely a top 5 return. I have an argument that it could be a top 2 to 3. And even at that, it's hard because it's like fan response for CM Punk back to AEW was a big deal. But I don't know that it was as impactful as the way WWE did this. And I can't wait till they show the footage from behind the scenes where they're, because now WWE is letting us see all of the details and everything behind the scenes of what's going on. To where they already put out videos of her signing her contract and all this stuff and everything. But I think the bigger play here was how they handled the broadcast of this, because usually the hosts are hyping up that person coming out. And there was, what was it, maybe 10 seconds?
They let it breathe, yeah.
Hype. And then she started skipping, and they did not say another word until she went all the way around the ring.
It's a classic it's a Vince Scully move. It's let it breathe. Yeah.
Put her face and chin on the mat, saying, "Hey, Becky, I'm back, and thanks for holding my spot. We appreciate it." Like the statement that it made was just incredible. And the fact that it created so much buzz. And look, from a social media standpoint for them, they've gotten the most views they've ever had on videos because of the return to her. It trended for like 3 days. Yeah. It was the top trending thing online. I mean, that return was incredible. So let's talk with you guys. Becky Lynch basically instigates the return of AJ Lee, and AJ Lee is now back in the world of wrestling.
And that's what I actually think is interesting, because whether you want to rank it like a top 5, top 3 type of return of all time, what's interesting to me is that it shows that sometimes if you, and I'm not going to say I'm a smart, this person's a smart, this person's a casual, whatever, that's gotten so diluted anyway. And Brendan, you even know what that's about. But the writing was very much on the walls for this. And it's an example of how even if the seeds are planted and you kind of have some evidence going in, you can still be equally as surprised, right? It's kind of like aspects that we've seen in, certain movies that you kind of know that event, that big, like ultimate type of climax is coming. But until you actually see it, it doesn't really, it can't really deliver itself. You're not truly satisfied. And that's what this was. Once Becky put her hands on CM Punk, once she really got in the mix of all this, you knew, much like Steve said, where to the degree where Rollins was almost taking the back seat, you knew somehow they were going to bring AJ back into the mix, just because there has been rumors about it, right? There's been footage of her training in the ring with Punk. I'm not saying necessarily that we knew it was going to be a mixed tag team type of match, but there was going to be some way they would kind of segue her return. It just needed to be genuine and organic. And this was as genuine and organic as it could possibly be. That's why I don't know where necessarily I'll rank it, but it kind of reminds me when Brock first returned in 2012, the night after WrestleMania. That was rumored forever. There was like a buzz that he was in the building in Miami the night of the event itself. There was rumors that he was in the building for Raw the next night. Like, you just had a feel he may pop up, but once that music hit and he got in the ring with Cena, everything just changed. The roof blew off the place, and it's an iconic pop. This is kind of the same thing, and that's why it's so brilliantly done. Not everything needs to necessarily be one of those things that goes under the radar on the dirt sheets, that avoids any kind of social media traction. Sometimes you could have a lot of buzz and have a lot of rumblings, kind of like what we've gotten for certain movies, but until it actually happens, it doesn't matter anyway. It's all null and void. So like Steve said, this, knowing that it could potentially happen based off of what we saw with Becky Lynch last Monday night on Raw, getting in Punk's face, slapping him, doing the whole, 9 yards. But then once you knew that she was in the mix, now you needed the great equalizer. AJ Lee proves to be just that. And then the rest is just organic wrestling magic. They, like Steve said, the production elements, the way they handled the broadcast and the commentary, they knew how to let it breathe, and they did exactly that. So shout out to Corey Graves and Michael Cole for that aspect. Shout out to the production truck. Everything just kind of clicked, and it also kind of just shows where CM Punk is now. There are so many things that CM Punk is kind of checking off the list, some controversial, some not. But if we wanted him to kind of get everything off the table for this final stint, this return stint for WWE, this is just another example that he's doing just that.
Yeah, and they've been doing some stuff real quick on the back end of like showing some of the positivity that CM Punk has been doing on his appearances, right?
Big time.
In Saudi that he pushed, pushed it out of the way a little bit, and then it turned right back around.
Yeah,
that he went over and took a selfie with the kid and all this stuff and everything, right? So it was like, okay, I was kind of being like angry and mad, kind of giving that perception to the TV, but here, let me actually give you some time, and I do
lure you back in.
And I think WWE is doing a really great job of like recognizing the fans. And then Brendan, you were telling me about, the fact that now that WWE's got more deals with ESPN and all of this stuff, like bring us into that, because I think this sets up why this is such a big return.
Right. We have an image for the upcoming PLE that they're doing, and it's called WrestlePalooza or something like that. And one of the things that that WWE is doing really well right now is they're realizing that, some of these guys still have gas in the tank. CM Punk is like 46 and AJ Lee is like 38 right now. And the thing that they have a few more matches left in them and using those to the best effect. So right now they're switching platforms again, which, dude, every 2 years they're switching platforms now. But PLEs are going to go to ESPN. So now they got to try to figure out a way to get American viewers, because everywhere else in the world it's on Netflix now. So you get SmackDown and Raw and Netflix and PLEs all on Netflix. So if you have a VPN and Netflix, you can anyway. But what they're doing is they're drawing some of these folks out that are just past their expiration date, that are just got a few matches left in them, and they're using them to get those new subscriptions on the new platform. And I think it's really, really smart. AJ Lee, I will always love. We did an interview with her for Comic-Con for a book that she did called Day of the Dead Girl. And it was one of my favorite interviews, but it was also like the only interview that I ever blushed, because she and Amy Garcia were so complimentary of videos of mine that they had watched previously. And I was sitting there going, wait a second, they watched all the interviews I've ever done, and they still did this interview. And then they're like complimenting me and stuff. So I had to cut it off. I had to be like, okay, I'm done. Have a nice day. But they were amazing. But yeah, I think this is a smart use of talent, like I said, that's just past their prime, that still has some in the tank. It's really great that AJ Lee was willing to do this. There was no way in the world she was ever going to AEW, but when WWE, which is her home locker room, comes calling, she answered the call this time, and I think she's got a good 6 or 8 month run in her.
And it's interesting. Just one quick contribution regarding the PLE. The timing is just so interesting, because given what Dana White and company has done with the UFC signing with Paramount, it really is the nail in the coffin of the quote unquote pay-per-view era. And now if you're a sports fan, you see ESPN plugging to the moon and back. John Cena is even a part of their advertising and their marketing for that. New not over the top, but straight to the consumer service that ESPN is doing, basically cutting through the entire middleman and putting all their on-air their programming, all their content in one place, where regardless of who your provider is, regardless of who you like to stream from, you can get it, especially if you're already tapped into ESPN somehow in some way anyway, with any kind of device, any kind of smart device, any kind of, internet-based device you can use. And in between what UFC is doing with Paramount, what WWE is doing with their PLEs now, Brendan said, there's a little bit of there's a lack of continuity with how often it's changed in recent years, but it just goes to show where we are. We're getting all this type of top-notch content at a time where really we're not going to have to pay for it, at least in the same way we once did. So it actually really is prominent. To the fans who are going to buy it anyway, they don't really care. But for a lot of people, that's going to make a big deal.
Well, getting that casual observer back and viewer back. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into, is the fact that, look, I'm a casual watcher of WWE stuff. I don't watch every event. I watch highlights. And I'm more intrigued now to go back and watch this. I also want to watch the finality of Cena's run here. We now know that his last appearance is going to be in Washington, right? In Washington, D.C., whereas we thought there was a chance that actually this WrestlePalooza, there was a chance that it was the final, and then there was a discussion that he would have his finale in Boston, right? But that is not the case now. We have found that out. So they're doing a lot of things to really bring in, back to the fan, this storyline concept, because I think they went away from it. And, the other thing too is that the women's division in general it's been down the last 6 months. And it really is and look, WrestleMania was great. And I think we went on the podcast talking about the fact that, that might've been the greatest women's match of all time, that, at that WrestleMania. And then the fact you had, a couple of the other female wrestlers that had, good, strong showings at WrestleMania. And then they're like non-existent right now. If they have the matches are kind of like an afterthought. They're quick. They're not. And I think that probably has to do with some health, right? That has to do with some of those things. I know those are, very important, but at the same time, I think that we're seeing that the women's side of the division has some power in it. And when you bring an AJ Lee in and just ignite a fan base, you're bringing back people, you're getting people back involved. You're doing this. And, Brendan, you talked, I think the Undertaker's return was one of the comments that you made to me of when he returned, and came back and everybody, went berserk and all of that. From a casual side, Paul, I know that you know, WWE, obviously you see everything that comes through, you know, kind of what's going on. Your thumb's not as on the pulse as say like Brendan or Brett's would be, right? These guys are diehard, you know, habitual watchers of WWE.
Smarks.
Schedule their spot. And for you though, like when you see the social media on stuff like this, does it like from a casual standpoint, are you like, okay, I want to check out this storyline, this is interesting? I mean, obviously you love TV, you love production and so on. So when you see something like this, it's being done so well. Does it, you know, are you excited for this? Is this something that you look forward to? Will you be watching? How do you see this?
Well, it's funny because I would not know who AJ Lee is if it wasn't for Amy Garcia, spelled with 2 E's, because Amy, as you may or may not know, is from Chicago. And I put together a Latino, or well, say a Latino improv group, but it was really more of a sketch group that we all happened to be Latino, but used improv as well. And that was Salsation, which they're still together. So shout out to Salsation after maybe almost 30 years. But I put that together back in Chicago, and Amy actually performed with us a few times back then. And we knew that she was going to go on to bigger and better things. And for those who don't know, I believe that she's a co-writer on some comics with AJ Lee. So that's how AJ Lee was on my radar, believe it or not. But then also most recently, I saw the where John Cena was being a heel, and or maybe that's the way his character was going, and he, you know, insulted the fans, of course, as a heel was supposed to do. And part of that was he insulted a little boy, the Belgian kid. So that's what caught my attention and got me going into it. So they're doing a great job as far as social media goes, because it just came across my feed on X, and I go, okay, what's, you know, chat, you know, Grog, what is Belgian boy, you know, and what's going on, and it, you know, it was like, oh wow, you know, he stepped up, he apologized to the kid. He's at heart, you know, he's not a bad guy. He's an actor. He's a great, you know, I think he's a great actor. So that's, I mean, I think they're doing a great job as far as social media, getting people that are like me on the fringe. Yeah, I've got pop culture reference, but I'm not diehard fans like these two guys over here. But it's definitely out there. It's in the universe, and it's exciting stuff. Anything.
This is a thing that exists. Paul is confirming that professional wrestling does in fact exist.
And let me ask you.
Yes, and I would never say it's fake.
And I know we're up against a break, but really quick, I just want to ask you guys. It's if just for the sake of Steve, you may know what it means, but Paul, the term kayfabe essentially means exactly what you just described. The fact that it's scripted. Obviously, you don't call it fake, but you call it predetermined. And for a long time, you protected the business by essentially playing along with it. But now, in between their social media, in between their production for certain behind-the-scenes things, you know, just their overall promotion of it all, kayfabe is dead, and it's been dead for quite a while. So I guess my ultimate question to you guys would be, if their social media and their YouTube is going to be so good at filling the audience in, like Steve alluded to, does it really matter anymore? Because there are a lot of smarks, and I know, Brendan, you'll define what a smark actually is as we wrap things up here. But there are a lot of smarks that are, you know, agree with the old heads and agree with the traditional purists that this is something that should be kind of protected and safeguarded, to where kayfabe should always kind of be, you know, on the up and up and should be part of this code, whether it's unwritten or not. But a lot of fans don't care, and a lot of the fans, I think, are at the point now where, like, we know it's predetermined. We like the fact you could go without saying.
That show Unreal.
It's suspension of disbelief, right?
It's shot from Gorilla. They're
100%.
showing you all of the production
100%.
that goes into a show. So Smark, just to add up. So back in the day, to find out anything about professional wrestling, you had to go and buy what's called a dirt sheet. It was a magazine that would say who got, you know, what wins and what's happening in different territories and things like that. And that's how we all know everybody's real name and things like that, because they tried on these different. So a mark is who they're. It's a circus term. It's who they're targeting with the kayfabe, which is the story. And then there's what's called a smart mark, and those are the people that now on the internet, everybody knows everything. Everybody knows that AJ's real name is AJ Mendez. You know, because you can go on the internet right now and look up any of these people or what's happening, or speculation for what's happening backstage and things. So the term that Brett keeps using is smark, and it was actually used by people who were protecting kayfabe, who were mad that you could go out and buy these dirt sheets and know what was happening in the business. So as an insult, they came up with this term smark. And then people like Brett are like, well, hell yeah, I'm a smark. Like, I can read, but I could also appreciate what's happening out there and the production value of it and stuff like that. So there are people who watch, who know all these guys and what all their relationships are and all the previous gimmicks they've had and stuff like that, who still watch because they're trying to see where the story's going. You obviously know that the actors in your favorite film are not the people that you're watching.
Yep.
But you still go and watch the film, and it's the same kind of thing. It's like, you know, everything that's happening behind the scenes, but you still want to see how it all comes together.
And we're also at a point now where wrestling journalists, wrestling writers like Dave Meltzer, and I go back for guys for years, they had their star systems or match rating systems. But now guys like that, I'm not necessarily mocking them, but they've almost become a parody of themselves because now they're essentially reporting things that a lot of people can find on their own. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of them curate their sources a lot better than people do online, but that's a bigger issue entirely.
What's your source? Trust me, bro.
Right, exactly. That definitely transcends pro wrestling. There's a myriad of things that fall under that umbrella, but it's just one of those things. It's the fact that the wrestling community, the IWC, if you will, the internet wrestling community that Brennan and I have been a part of, whether we want to admit it or not, for so long, they're privy to a lot of stuff. And now you just break down that veil to where there's no gap or there's no barrier between us. Everything we're privy to now, everyone just knows we're privy to now. And like Brennan just said, the fact that they're kind of going with that, where Triple H doesn't really care. They're like, he's like, oh, okay, you guys are aware this is all happening. Well, let's give it to you on a smorgasbord with this new Unreal series. So they're definitely they're fine tuning things based off of that.
I think they looked at it differently, and it was pure and simple. This was out there, whether they chose to or not.
Bingo.
Because the fans were delivering it, and they saw that the fans were gaining value in, you know, content consumption from behind the scenes, right? So why not roll that yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's what they did. Guys, we're going to be going to a break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about the 1989 Batmobile and something that Fanhome has coming up. That'll be right coming up. This is the C3 Pod on the One of Us Comics Network.
Peppermint Patty's the worst. Comic-Con.com, your daily comic convention online. Insightful reviews, previews of the comics, toys, and games you need to know. Delightful chats with luminaries from around the geek spectrum. In print, on video, and everywhere in between. The show never stops on Comic-Con.com.
And welcome back to the C3 Pod. Of course, I'm Steve Johnston. I didn't actually introduce myself earlier. I just started talking, introduced everyone else, and never really did. But joined back with the guys, Brett Lawson, Brendan Allen, Paul Vato, and Johnny Jimenez, not with us this week, has said he will make his return next week. So yeah, I've been warned. But no, Johnny will be back with us next week, and we'll be at full strength, which we're looking forward. This segment is presented by the Nerd Bar in Fremont Street, Indianapolis, upstairs, just up from Johnny's Toy Shack. Programming every night of the week, micro wrestling, arcade, bowling alleys, UFC ring if you want to get real saucy. A lot of stuff you could do. You could go ride the bull. We'll leave it at that. Yeah, you've got a lot of fun there and everything. We want to thank the Nerd Bar for their support of the program. They've been on board since the jump, and we appreciate them and everything that they do with and for us. So we look forward to that next event that we'll be down there, with the group of us hanging out at the Nerd and having a good time. But if you're in Las Vegas and you get a chance to stop by the Nerd, tell them that the guys from the C3 Pod sent you, and come check us out. A lot of fun. Brendan's got something about the Nerd.
Well, I just want to say too is Johnny Borchata is one of the biggest wrestling nerds I've ever met in my life.
Yes.
You will find at the Nerd Bar ring used and signed gear from Mick Foley, from Sabu, from Ultimo Dragon, from Rey Mysterio. It's everywhere. And when you walk around and you see the stuff in there, I've been there before and people are like, why is all this stuff in glass? I'm like, because that's the actual stuff. That's Penta's mask right there. And they're like, what? It's crazy. But all over the place, every wall has these cases with original ring used gear in it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and he's got other stuff too, from TVs and movies and cool props, toys, comics, you just name it. There's a bunch of stuff in there. Again, listen, it's called the Nerd, right? And so they're fitting the bill. They're doing a good job with that. And it is kind of that Cheers feel when you go in, kind of everyone everywhere, just kind of having a good time. So yeah, if you're in Las Vegas, you're down on Fremont Street, make your way up to Indianapolis, go up to the second floor, visit the Nerd Bar, tell them that we sent you. We would absolutely love for you guys to do that. Now, we teased this before we went to break, but Fanhome, who, we've got a really great relationship with Fanhome and what they're doing. You can see in the background of Brendan's shot there that he has the ET, the extraterrestrial, that is a Fanhome Build As You Go project. And I'll let Brendan give you a little bit more details about this. But now we're going to be talking about a 1/8 scale 89 Batmobile that's done as a build-up subscription. So Brindis, give us some details about this and kind of how the subscription works.
All right. First of all, everybody who does diecast knows that 1/8 for scale is massive. The thing is 29.5 inches long. This is my Batmobile. I was 11 years old when 89 Batman came out, and I remember everybody was losing their minds because Batman was kind of getting a redesign. He was going to be super dark. You know, it was the whole black suit. It was the black car. It wasn't the like campy stuff that people were used to from, you know, the 60s series. But this is made of high detail die-cast metal and ABS components. It's got, you know, wings that open up. So in the movie, you know, when the Batmobile comes out, and all of a sudden there's rockets coming out of the side, and they've got the disc launchers and stuff. All of that stuff is on this model. We got some pictures. There we go. That's the backside. You see the turbine. You see the details there. That trunk opens up. There's a bunch of details in there. The canopy slides forward just like it does in the movie. There's a retractable roof canopy with a realistic dashboard. There's a front turbine. There's a remote control, just like this one I was just using for ET to make him say his phrases and things, that turn on lights and sound effects and probably pop out those little side things. But you see the grapnel on the side of the Batmobile there.
That's awesome.
Machine guns, disc launcher, grapnel. The wheels turn. But also the thing that's really great about this, it's such a showpiece. It is really, you know, almost 30 inches long. And, you know, if you have this thing in your living room on its stand or whatever, and you're sitting across the room and you've got the remote, a lot of times they put sensors in it too. I don't know the full details of this one yet because this is just what's on their website. They haven't sent out the press release yet. But one of my favorite things about this is I know the guy who designed it. So does Steve. Fireball Tim Lawrence will be coming on the show to talk about this model. And I can tell you that anytime I'm around, you know, I was at Magic Mountain the other day with my kids and I saw his Batmobile, but when something breaks at a Six Flags park, they just kind of like slap something on to fix it like the quickest way or whatever. So this thing is so Frankenstein in the park. I took a picture and sent it to Fireball and I was like, dude, what did they do to your baby? And he was like, those sons of, it was like, he takes such personal pride in this particular vehicle. I think it's the one that he really defines his career on. And he's going to talk to us about it probably next week or the week after. But we know Fireball. I love this car. This is my Batmobile, and I'm super stoked that Fanhome has given me the opportunity to build it.
I mean,
awesome.
Nothing is more iconic than this Batman. And look, you can argue, you know, favorite Batmans. Everybody does this and stuff. But this, if it's not your number one, if the 89 Batman and Batmobile and all the gadgets and everything are not your number one, it's your number two.
Yeah.
So it's such a high ranking, high visible, like, and this Batman, the Michael Keaton Batman, the fact they brought the Michael Keaton Batman back because it was so iconic and so big. And this Batmobile has stood. It has no feeling of it being old. The car doesn't feel dated. It doesn't feel like it's an old design. Whereas a lot of times when you see some of these great movie cars or TV cars, you know, and you think of stuff like the A-Team van and stuff, like they're dated. Optimus Prime is dated, right? Like as a vehicle in vehicle form. And they've had to like update and change him a bunch to not make it feel old. This, you could roll this Batmobile out today and it would be as accepted now as it was back then. And I think continuation on, this one lives forever, guys.
It's probably the most timeless because the one from the Nolan trilogy is like hyper modernized, has the military element, the tumbler, right? The one from the Pattinson movies kind of has that, you know, made it in his own like personal chop shop type of feel, right? And even some of the Affleck ones, it's very militarized as well, very weaponized. So in those aspects, it works. This is the only Batmobile that I truly feel is timeless, where you could put this Batmobile with any of those Batmans and it still works, right? Tim Burton's version of Gotham City may not work for all the Batmans. Even the suit itself, you could make the case, or the villains and the overall aesthetic. That may not work with every Batman. I feel you could put this Batmobile with any Batman and no one will complain. So I'm with you, Steve. If it's not your number one, it's usually always your number two. And at some point, it was everyone's, I like to think, first number one, especially when it comes to the vehicle.
And Paul, from an aesthetic standpoint of being in, you know, the entertainment industry and everything, when this movie came out, like how much of a game changer? I know, look, you're a kid of the 90s. We totally get it. You watch reruns. But the thing is, when this came out, like what was the impact of this movie during that time period compared to the other stuff we were getting?
It was the most impactful. And I still remember when the preview came out, I thought it was a joke, because we were used to Michael Keaton in roles like Mr. Mom, I guess. And I guess even at that age of 3 or 4, I was on a date with this young lady. And I remember the preview comes out and Michael Keaton says, "I'm Batman." And when he says that, I think we both laughed. We both giggled and laughed because I thought it was some kind of parody or a joke. And as the preview went on, it was like, oh my God, this is real. And, back then it wasn't like we couldn't go to the internet. There was, we didn't know such thing. The internet wasn't around. So it wasn't like, oh, there's a Batman movie coming out. Maybe had I been living in Hollywood or LA, maybe you heard about it. But even the fact that I believe it was filmed in Chicago, or at least, that's what played for Gotham. We didn't know anything about it. And it blew my mind away. It just, it revitalized the whole, because I was used to, Superman from the 60s, just watching that obviously in replays. But I was used to caricatures of superheroes. So when this Batman came out, and then what an interesting choice to have Michael Keaton play it. And again, I thought they were kidding. I thought this is, is this a sketch show? What's coming up?
Right.
What's coming up next? And then I was like, oh my God, no, this is real.
Well, because
and you can bet that I was there opening weekend or whenever, because it blew me away. And I think it blew everyone away.
Yeah, and I could totally understand that because, at that time period, so you had Robin Williams had some projects that were out, right? He had Hook. He had those, because again, you want to talk about the comedians, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, Michael Keaton's a comedian, right? The comedians were really the guys that were like starting to really showcase themselves into movies.
Yeah.
And, Michael Keaton had just played Mrs. Doubtfire, right? Multiplicity, right? These movies
I think that was Robin Williams, but yeah.
What I'm saying is that, these movies had just been done, right? And again, I'm bringing up that's the type of movies that those comedians were doing. So to put the guy in that fashion, to present him as he's going to be something else, right? Yeah. Were really the things. I mean, listen, I'll argue with Eric, the producer. He wants to say Gung Ho and Mr. Mom were Keaton's big comedy is, Beetlejuice, obviously, and he did correct himself because I think that's his big, calling card. But also at the same time, when he had those movies that were those, he was playing that role of the funny dad, the, the friend, neighbor, that's the roles that he was playing. To take on such a role that and streamline it different, because for a long time, Batman was presented always as funny.
Yeah, campy.
Right?
It was
You got to
about
think
camp.
about the 66 Batman series and how it was sketch comedy and it was a lot of one-liners and little jokes and making fun of pop culture references
like
at that time.
Yeah.
Batman had a credit card before anybody had a credit card type thing. All of those things that had happened. So then when you come around and this really set up the dark Batman, right? Which was being portrayed in comic books at the time, which is why this
not
even
cinematically,
occurred, right?
No, exactly.
So once this happened and you started to see it, then that's where we got the Heath Ledger Jokers down the road, the Tom Hardy Banes, these characters that like became iconic cinematically, spun off of this movie, opened the door for that type of character set.
And it's the same thing, right? Getting a really established actor to play your villain, kind of taking a page out of 1978 Superman's book with Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, right? Yeah. Who was bigger than Jack Nicholson by the late 80s, early 90s. He already had like 3 Oscars up at that point, was a perfect get, especially for that type of aesthetic, right? Everything they were trying to do with the Danny Elfman music and like that almost kind of gothic horror portrayal of Gotham, it all worked because, like you said, we had seen Darkness and Batman with Denny O'Neil and some of these other writers, and they did it brilliantly, but the mainstream audience, even the casual audience, wasn't familiar with that. They needed something cinematically to see, and they got it. And, also, when you look at the Batman animated series with Bruce Timm, that necessarily wasn't considered the same canon, but it kind of serves as an unofficial de facto cartoon version of the Batman of the first Tim Burton film, right? From the music to the feeling, the aesthetic, right? Obviously Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, they carved their own niches and they were brilliant in doing so. But that show was very much set up by that movie. And next, you know, you have Batman Returns, which is a great sequel. Then it kind of goes off the rails with the Schumacher films, and they have to recalibrate again with Christopher Nolan. But before they even got there, like Steve said, the ball got rolling with that Batman movie, and Superman movie or superhero movies really became a thing after that. Like the genesis of it all may have been with with Christopher Reeve's Richard Donner film, but they actually became a true trend where everyone was trying to mimic that for to this very day. That first Tim Burton movie really set that all up.
No,
was Penguin in the first one or the second one? I forget.
Second one with Cat.
So everybody remembers the like jokey Penguin and stuff like that, and then you get to Danny DeVito's version of it, and it's like I watched it again recently with my kids, and it's like it's darker than I remember it, and you're watching the whole thing, and it's like you feel bad for Danny DeVito's character until he starts killing people and being disgusting, but like the whole setup for it is like he's an orphan. It's like this whole like tragic tale and stuff like that, and you kind of get it. It's like I would hate people too. You get them, fool. Like go for it. Like
well, what they started
that became a trend too. The empathetic villain, right?
In that comic book line leading up, what you had is you had like this turn to like a dark Batman, right? Where Batman was really starting to become angry. Frustrated, you know, whatever it is, and we're seeing, you know, the evolutions to today, and you even get into how the Absolute Batman line is just completely this whole new storyline and take and everything, but it still has that dark and gritty feel. Like this became ingrained into the Batman culture to where now every single Batman, you know, production, comic book, fan films, whatever it is, we can actually like see that happening. You know what I'm saying?
So much so to the point, not to interrupt, but you have to wonder now if James Gunn, much like he did with the David Cornsett Sweat Superman, kind of gave it that lighthearted, like we talked about last week, Silver Age of feel. I'm curious to see if James Gunn, with whoever he casts as Batman with this Brave and the Bold movie, kind of takes an approach to not make him like Adam West caliber or, you know, George Clooney caliber, but to kind of make him a little more fantastical, to make it a little more comic booky, to make him maybe a little more lighthearted. You still have the grim, evil slums of Gotham City, and you still have Batman trying to battle his cynicism, right? And his depression and his rage and all that. But it's done in a way where you could show the Bat family. You could show maybe a little more of maybe not camp, but an element that kind of goes with a little more corniness that Superman did very effectively. But we've talked about that, Steve. That's more so because James Gunn really knows what he's doing. Most filmmakers couldn't effectively do that with Batman.
Yeah, absolutely. And soundtracks on top of it, right?
100%.
So, which again, the score for the 89 Batman was actually done really well. And obviously Prince, and you know the what was it, the New Generation, what was his band, anyways, you know, their portrayal of the music score and the theme and everything like really worked for the time period. Really created it. It doesn't get too old. Yes, the music's a little old, but it's not too old, especially when you're watching, you know, the Joker portray the Sinisterous. You know, I've always loved that when you see a franchise like this that's so celebrated and so big, they like bring together people to appear like shows and stuff. Like I recall getting like 2 or 3 of the Batmans together where you got like a Batman voice actor, you got you know, one of the guys that portrayed, now the one guy that never really did, and I guess we understand, is Christian Bale never really made appearances as Batman. He seemed to be very unhappy ultimately with, you know, that role, which is why we never got the follow-up. Like, you know, the real follow-up from him. Which is too bad because I think there was a chance that he could have been like everyone's favorite Batman, but unfortunately,
well, except that the angst, because he's a character actor, right? Like he does a method actor, so he does the stuff to get into character. You know, part of the performance is the fact that he was so miserable. Like I don't think you get that same performance if he's happy on set.
No, of course, and the thing is just unfortunately he took that, you know, a little too far into you know, things with how, you know, people perceived him, and it made it tough, right? I mean, there's an argument that we're towing that line right now with Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool. Like, you know, all you need to hope is that they run a whole set of Marvel marketing of how funny Deadpool is, so we can kind of forget about the off-camera, you know, things that have happened with them, because unfortunately we're in that perception based world. But I love when they put those like groups together and stuff. And one of the places that does it better than anybody I can think of is actually coming up September 25th to 27th. That's FanX Salt Lake. They do such an incredible job at FanX of putting together fan experiences. And Brendan, I know that you and I talked quite a bit about what they were doing at this show, and we definitely wanted to highlight it. So run us through some of these experiences that FanX is putting together, giving people an opportunity to enjoy.
Well, you hit it a little bit there, and I just want to say FanX is one of my favorites right now for promoting shows, because they really try to make that fan experience, and they make it so that whatever your fandom is, or whatever generation you're from, and we'll get to that in 1 second here, whatever generation from, there's something there for you. So the Doctor Who reunion, they've got like every one of David Tennant's companions coming. So they've got Catherine Tate, Freema, I don't know how to say this name, but Freema and Billy Piper are all going to be there. And then for the wrestling fans, for WWE, WCW, and ECW, they've got Mick Foley, Ric Flair, Trish Stratus, Sting, Lita. And then you go a little bit further back, and you've got the 80s kids. So National Lampoons, Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, and Randy Quaid are going to be there from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Happy Days, they've got Don Most, Anson Williams, and Henry Winkler there. I Dream of Jeannie's Barbara Eden is going to be there. But then you've got The Walking Dead, and you've got Lord of the Rings. So John Rhys Davies, Sean Astin, David Wenham, and Miranda Otto are going to be there. And this is just for the entertainment side. They've also got a bunch of comics guests. So Joe Rubenstein, Jack Davison, Colleen Duran, Jimmy P are going to be there. And one of the things that's really, really funny about this to me is there are people who are on the guest list who don't have anything to do with any of these properties, but they've been in a film with Sean Astin. So you've got, what's the guy's name? Hequan. What's his first name? I can't think of it.
Ki Kwan, right?
Yeah, Ki Kwan is going to be there
because
he's been with Sean Astin in the Goonies.
Yeah.
But you could bring a couple of Stranger Things people. You can bring a couple of Lord of the Rings people. You can bring some Goonies out. Wherever Sean Astin is, he's got like 6 different fan groups that he can that he can be photographed with, or you can have an experience with. And I was saying that, it used to be 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but I believe now the better metric is 6 degrees of Sean Astin, because not only can you trace back any actor or any pop culture reference back to Sean Astin, you can also tell how old the person is you're talking to by what they remember him from.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For sure. No doubt.
Is it Rudy? Is it Sam? Is it, is it the Goonies? Where does it begin?
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, right. Samwise.
It really depends. Paul, when you see this group of people that they're talking about right here, like, I really think that, when we look at this, we're looking at this from a standpoint of like, how cool is it that a lot of these older actors, like the Chevy Chases and stuff, really haven't made a ton of appearances in the world of comic books, pop culture, these type of conventions, for you to see these guys coming back. And because it's so easy to go look at the work they did now in the past, I can go find it easily, that I look it up. I don't know much about National Lampoons because, look, I'm a young kid just out of college, whatever it is. And I go and look and I go, oh my gosh, this guy was a comedic genius. Randy Quaid, comedic genius. Like, I get to go see these for the first time. How exciting is it to you to see these guys kind of rebirth their careers?
Oh, it's amazing. And I don't know all the stories, but I know also, Chevy Chase has many times, I think people have had issues with him. So I think that this would maybe clear up a lot of that, or at least show that he's not that person that a lot of people think that he might be. As because as fans, you just hear things and then all of a sudden you're an expert on it. But so it's great to see. I'm friendly with Michael Anthony Hall, and I love his history. Most recently on Reacher, I think maybe he's done something after that. But Anthony Michael Hall was the original Rusty on National Lampoon's Vacation, and he was, I think, the youngest member ever at SNL. So I wish he would be there as well. I talked to my friend Naomi Grossman, who's Pepper on American Horror Story, and she tells me about these conventions and how much she really enjoys meeting the fans. So I think it works both ways, where the fans get to meet their idols and people that bring back all these great memories. But I think as actors, we also get a lot out of it, because people are justifying that work that you did, and especially somebody as prolific as Sean Austin Green, where his whole life he's been in front of the camera, and he's done some amazing work, and his, I guess, pedigree, if you call it, I believe what his mom's Patty Duke, or, so he comes from acting royalty, and it's amazing to be able to see him and interact with him and meet your stars, the people that made our childhood great. And to be able to do that, it's great that they're able to do it and are willing to come out and meet the fans. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, it's a great perspective into it, right? Like, for you to be bringing that up, because as you were saying that, the thing that triggered to me, and Brendan, correct me if maybe I'm stepping on what you were thinking, but as he's saying that, I started thinking about the fact that for me with Pawn Stars, how rewarding it is when someone walks up and is like, hey, I loved this episode from you. And in my mind, I'm like, we filmed that 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and that's the top of your mind when you see me and you come across me, is that episode's like kind of what stands out to you. It's the thing that stood out. It's rewarding to see people kind of like appreciate the work that you've done, right?
100%. And for me, it's a little different because they're like, oh, are you that idiot that photographed his butt and fell into the copier? Or, are you Luisito, the dummy that try to sell, burritos for Del Taco, but also I've got great stories. I've got a great story where I got recognized at a bowling alley in the Valley. I don't know if we've got time for that now, or I can do it kind of quickly. This guy.
You know what I actually think? You know what I think?
That?
I want to save that for the afterwards.
Patreon, baby.
After the show for the Patreon, because we now have a Patreon that you can get some of this extra content at the end of the podcast. We're going to save it for that. So Paul Vato's story about being recognized is going to be on the Patreon.
But I also want to say, this is why I will never stop fighting for a hedgehog movie. So guys, if you could help me get a hedgehog movie, then it's for the people, really. They want to see me.
There is a hedgehog movie. All you need to do is become really good friends with Jim Carrey. Okay, that's it. Right? And you're in the door. Guys, we're going to go to a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about this week's upcoming comic books. There's quite a bit coming up, and there's a cool crossover that we're going to be talking about. Look, more Batman discussion after the break, but this is the C3 Pod right here on the One of Us Comics Network.
Peppermint Patty's the worst. Comicon.com, your daily comic convention online. Insightful reviews of the comics, toys, and games you need to know. Delightful chats with luminaries from around the geek spectrum. In print, on video, and everywhere in between. The show never stops on Comicon.com.
All right, welcome back to the C3 Pod. This portion of the program is presented by our friends downtown Las Vegas at Voodoo Brewery. Voodoo Brewery bringing so much fun entertainment. It's a cool spot. It's a local feel with a nice, inviting environment for tourists. It's a small spot, but it's really worth the time going there. The team there is really fun, and they always have cool creative events. They have a nice outdoor space. They do live music out there, DJs, and all of that is brought to you from the Voodoo Brewery. So make sure that you guys are 100% involved. And Voodoo Brewery is also the official food and beverage provider for the Pokékon Green Room, or what that means is Paul Vato will be tasked to go get Voodoo Brewery for Brendan Allen while he and Brett Lawson host the stage at Pokékon, which is coming up September 20th and 21st. Go to PokékonLV.com for more information. But guys, this week's comics, every single week when new comic books are coming out, right? And whether it's the One of Us Comics downtown, the Pandemonium Cards and Comics in Henderson, these locations with the comic books coming out, the number ones are every week. There's new number ones now. This is now the new comic book culture, is we're going to start something new every week. 52 weeks of number ones, which I think could be a compendium, right? Right. We see this all the time, but it's great to see that there's some continuations and some rebirth to some vintage, toys and comic lines. And we're going to kick off this week's comics with Nightwing number 130. And Brendan, tell us what we can expect in the new all-in Nightwing 130.
Okay, so Nightwing all right, I can talk, I promise. Nightwing number 130. The keys on this one is a possible appearance of Nightwing Prime, Bryce Morin, who was introduced a while ago, and he's supposed to be coming into the story as Nightwing's protege. So it says Nightwing finds himself thrust into the unlikely role of mentor to an aspiring hero with incredible power. But is the city of Bloodhaven big enough for the both of them?
I love the color. Again, it's not a negative space color, but when you have the solid backgrounds, I'm always a big fan of that. I just think that really accents the art. This is done really well. Obviously they're showing that it's backlit, right? So you got the moon up in the back and they're backlighting them. So it's dark to the front as it should be. Very nice, addition in my opinion. Nightwing's one of those characters. We talked about Nightwing last week. Nightwing is one of those characters that, from the Robin side of, the DC world, he's in that next set tier of heroes and villains that, people like, but has a niche, has a group, he has a following that people just are into Nightwing stuff. And they did some nice things with covers here too. So why don't we go ahead and show the cover B? I guess it's the George Fornes variant.
Right. So one of the things that's really cool about this is the Jorge Fornes variant.
Jorge.
And this is a throwback to those old like detective serials and stuff like that, where they have the detective creeping across and you see the shadow behind them, and then the big bad comes behind him and thumps him in the back of the head or whatever. So I really love the throwback to this. But I also wanted to highlight an open order cover, because we talk about the incentive covers all the time. This is one that your LCS can just get for you. They don't have to order 200 copies. And one of the ones that we're going to talk about later is a one of like 1,000. They've got to order 1,000 copies to get the variant. But this one's just open order. It's a nice throwback. It's very, very simple. There's like 4 colors on here, and like I said, it throws back to those old detective serials. I like it a lot.
And Brett, you're big in the world of DC, and specifically you really like the whole Nightwing, Tim Drake storylines, all of this stuff and everything. Where does this storyline and kind of where this is going, where does it kind of reside to you in the Nightwing, lore for you?
Right. Absolutely. No, I love it because all the things that we, for a long time, Nightwing was kind of like a character that was coming to his own for the longest period of time. So everything you got, you kind of enjoyed. Now he's solidified enough to where you could go off the staples, right? So different elements of Dick Grayson's character, different detective elements, the aspect of Bloodhaven. Anytime you can really emphasize Bloodhaven the same way you could emphasize Gotham or even Metropolis for other DC characters, right? As Brendan said, we have that in the cover. You have the batons. You have that film noir detective element, which anything you tie into the Bat family, not only does that work, in my personal opinion, that's like the best thing you could possibly lead with. That's one thing. That's one reason why I would love to see maybe a Dick Grayson Nightwing type of character in the Matt Reeves movies, because he taps heavily into the film noir and the detective stuff. So anytime a Nightwing comic can do that, whether it be a story that very much immerses him with other DC happenings, or that's more of a standalone isolated story, you want those certain staples, right? Steve and Brendan, you guys do a good job of like really curating what kind of is on the up and up as far as the authenticity and the genuine feel, the genuine aesthetic of it all. This has just that. And like Brendan said, it taps into the old detective crime, pulp fiction type of mystery that we always want for these type of characters. And again, anytime you could see Nightwing doing his thing with his batons, with his martial arts, it's just a really cool character, man. And anytime you emphasize that over the ancillary things, it just makes for a better comic.
And I think there's an opportunity here with Nightwing, and I think they know this, that they could start building Nightwing into some of the cinematic stuff.
No doubt.
All of that. And it's enough to me, the Nightwing storyline to most casual people was kind of what the Guardians of the Galaxy storyline was to most casual people.
Right.
So if they could capture a little bit of the magic that they, put together, that Marvel was able to put together with bringing, Guardians of the Galaxy to the big screen, I could imagine what they could do with a Nightwing, especially with a, look, Nightwing's got a little bit of that smartass commentary that Deadpool, a little bit of that bottled Deadpool, a little bit of that. There's fun, there's jokes. There's definitely, shows the imperfections of the character and the light, where the character is very vulnerable, and I think that those could play well. So again, I hope they move forward. I really do like the Jorge Fornes variant, though. I think that's a very cool cover because of the stylization of it. So that's,
and I think what you bring about imperfection, Steve, is a great point. because a lot of the general consensus, obviously there are varying opinions, but a lot of the general consensus surrounding Nightwing is that he is almost a refined version of what like Batman ideally should be, right? He's the Batman who kind of learned to work through the trauma, learn to work through the baggage, and actually does things for a lot more, you know, not to get too mental healthy with it, but that's a big talking point for, you know, the current generation and how they like their superheroes and what they tap into. That's a big reason why certain, you know, things like the Thunderbolts this year and things like the Fantastic Four and Superman did well, because it resonates with people in those attributes. People like seeing vulnerability with their superheroes. And with Nightwing, you have all the badass, you know, spirit of vengeance, almost this crusade aspect that you have in Batman, but you also get a lot of the personality and character traits that are refined that you don't see so much in Batman, which really kind of further drives home the point that Dick Grayson is kind of Bruce Wayne's greatest achievement more than anything else.
Well, you know, and speaking of Bruce Wayne and Batman, the next book, this one's kind of fun. Brendan, tell us what's coming up with this next book.
All right, so this is Marvel and DC got together for a Deadpool Batman. This one's an anthology of Marvel and DC crossover stories featuring character team-ups from each universe. The last time they did this, it was really big, was Amalgam Comics in 1996, and I remember some of the mashups that they were doing. These are going to be team-ups instead of mashing two characters into one. I remember they did one that was Batman and Wolverine that was real fun.
Yeah.
But it says, Wade Wilson has been hired for a job in Gotham City, but will the world's greatest detective help him or destroy him? The main story stars Deadpool and Batman, written by Zeb Wells, drawn by Greg Capullo. Greg Capullo, obviously known for New 52 Batman. It's one of the best recent Batman stories, is that New 52. But they kind of like put this one as like an anthology series, but it's really only one book. And the one shot also has a Daredevil and Green Arrow by Kevin Smith, who's in comics now and does a fantastic job with these. Drawn by Adam Kubert. Captain America Wonder Woman by Chip Zdarsky and Terry Dodson. And Jeff the Landshark crosses up with Crypto in a story by Kelly Thompson with Guri Hiru.
So what I love about this is you're getting the guy that puts up with the least amount of nonsense and the guy that portrays the biggest amount of nonsense together, which, I mean, let's be fair. This is literally Paul Vato and Brendan Allen, you know, in a comic book, right, Paul?
Which one am I? I mean, just to clarify.
You know, you're definitely not Batman. Okay?
Got it. I got it. Yeah.
And Kevin Smith has taken the ultimate view of that too, so you can't have that one as well. So I think we're gonna have to go with Paul Pool. Right?
Deadpool.
Okay, I'll go Deadpool. I like Deadpool. Do you agree?
We should get him a costume, one of those spandex suits to wear to Pokékon with the hood that looks like Deadpool. We'll call him Deadpool.
Deadpool. I love it.
He's like the smart-ass character, but just doesn't want to do anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love it. It's right up my alley.
He's like, that's in a nutshell.
So speaking of quintessential Batman artists, Greg Capullo did the variant for this one. And this is a 1 of 200 sketch variant. And the thing that I love about this is that if you ever see Greg Capullo at a convention, his line literally goes around the building. They have people with stop signs that are holding the place so that people can get through the line because it's so big. People want these sketches. And you can look at this and see how raw it is, but you can also see how complete it is. And you can kind of see his process. I love this cover for people who can't necessarily afford a Capullo sketch variant or an original sketch from him, but also for the signability. You can just wait in line, pay whatever his fee is for a signature, and get a sketch quality with his signature on it without paying for the original sketch.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Capullo's art is amazing. He's done such a great job. He's done such a great job on some of these iconic covers with some of the biggest, arguably some of the biggest characters, you know, in the spaces. And so to see him, you know, being involved with this line, I'm not surprised, you know, just because he does deliver such a, you know, great rendition. You know, something else that I think that they're doing a really great job of here is that even though he's distanced from Marvel, right, because of his whole falling out with the Deadpool thing and everything, Rob Liefeld is talking about this in particular and how this is kind of moving towards and some of the roots that, you know, his mind of the character sets and the way that he was creating the concept of what Deadpool would be and everything. You know, he saw, I think there was a video I saw where he was talking about, he saw McFarlane drawing Batman and, you know, how Batman was really changed from what, it was, but then he also had his, independent standalone characters. And so, that drove him to come up with Deadpool and really motivated him to have that. So when you've got a guy like that, that's out there talking this up because of the continuation of the life of, look, arguably one of the, bigger characters in the Marvel universe, right, with Deadpool. And then to have, there's a fair argument to say that Batman is probably the most iconic of the DC. Yes, Superman is probably there. There's a good argument to have, right? It's got a tenured past for a long time.
Yeah.
But it always seems like Batman supporting a Superman thing is always a bigger deal than Superman supporting a Batman thing. So
always,
from that standpoint, like getting these two characters together, it's like putting two monsters together. And Brendan, I know you had some thoughts on this.
Well, I was just going to say that this sketch variant, the A cover is the same image, but it's colored. And one of the things that's always interesting to me is when you see the process and you see that, sometimes there's a penciler and then an inker and then a colorist. A lot of times the guys will do their own pencils and inks together, but you can see what the colorist actually brings to this image because it looks very raw on the sketch cover. And then when you look at the colored cover, there are very, very slight differences, but just the focus is a little different. It's a little bit sharper. It kind of brings things together a little bit. So I love both of these covers. I love that the one is the sketch that has a lot of space for signing and things like that on that. But I also love that when you put them side by side, or if you look at them back to back, you can see the difference that a good colorist makes. No matter who the artist is, the colorist is going to make or break how that comes off of the page.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a solid, cover. I think this line's going to do really well. And then what we don't have to show, and they're actually down the road. So what's funny is I was explaining this to someone in store. This is very hard to do. And it's hard to get Marvel and DC to unlock characters,
right,
and then cross-platform the sales, right? Because look, at the end of the day, it's about sales. Who's making what? How's it doing? Who's selling it? Is it Marvel selling it? Is it DC? They decided to split it up. So they each have their own versions of these books, and they're doing their own covers, and they're coming from the different publishing sides. So there's DC will publish one book on their side. Marvel will publish a book on their side. And then you've got the cross of characters that can be shared amongst them. So one of the coolest things is actually a Marvel, Marvel kind of surprise, but it's done on the DC side. And that is, there is a Doom and Joker cover that'll be coming out. And Joker is actually being choked by Doom on the cover. And it just tells you that they've opened up the space to bring some of the characters to life that is going to value for each side. And I just, I don't know that we're going to get a ton of this because look, at the end of the day, it's really hard to get the two powerhouses to want to agree on money. And especially if we find out in 6 weeks that the Marvel sales were 3-1 over, what
DC was doing
over DC was or whatever, obviously that's gonna impact some, perception.
Well, it's just the biggest thing that's going to impact down the line is who gets the bigger cut of the of the collaboration. So Marvel's going to be like, well, we had 75% of the share, so we're giving you 75% of the profit on this or whatever.
And that's where these always become tricky. But in the meantime, as a fan, we're about to get some really cool stuff. And I'm a big Deadpool guy. Batman's cool to me. I like Batman stuff. I think there's, look, that 89 Batmobile, like I'm thinking like, yeah, I probably need to go get signed up for that subscription. Right. But at the same time, Deadpool is a character. Like I invest into the character of Deadpool. Like I like to watch the clips, and when, they did all the lead ups to the Deadpool and Wolverine movie and all the little funny skits and all the stuff.
Yeah.
All the commercials that they created, whether it was for Ryan Reynolds, projects that he owned or for different businesses that were promoting or whatever, and getting out and doing these things. I love all of that, but to see this coming alive in the comic book world and knowing how big of a monster this is going to be, and let's be fair, we just had Batman 1, so we just had a restart on Batman on the whole Batman run. Now you're getting Batman and Deadpool, and then the 20th is Batman Day. So they're rolling this out. Batman is going to be a big deal over the next 4 months. Everything Batman is going to be being talked about. You're right in the middle of, one of the better modern runs of comic books of Absolute, and specifically Absolute Batman. So the fact that you have that with such strength behind it already, and then you're going to add interest by doing these things. I mean, great job for DC to pull themselves out of a hole, because a year ago we could have looked across the counter at each other and we would have had a discussion about how DC needs to step up their game. Oh, wait, we did have that discussion.
Yeah.
That they needed to step up their game and, really improve what they're trying to put out and do, whether it's cinematically, whether it's from the comic side. They were getting very social, current event topic, in the comic books and everything. And to see this come back, and it's like, look, we're going to have some fun. It's going to be a little serious in some areas. We're going to pit the powers of the different superheroes and villains up against each other and see, who really stands. And you're going to be able to tell, hey, is Joker a more sinister villain than Doom, or vice versa? You're going to find these things out in this line, I believe.
And plus immersion and interest, as you just said, is crucial, because if you look at, whether it be Joker or Doom, those are two villains very few people, if any, are going to have soft opinions on, right? They're not characters you take or leave. Batman and Deadpool, whether you really love Batman and can take or leave Deadpool, or vice versa, you're never going to find an instance where someone, at least if they call themselves a fan, are going to come across anything with those two characters and think, yeah, neither one of them, they're kind of cool, but they don't really do it for me. Rest assured, at least one of them, and a good chance that both of them are going to do it for you. So it just goes back to that. Not only do you have a collaboration, you have characters that are very much polar opposite of each other, but kind of have a similar type of fan base, a similar type of almost cult surrounding them. So when you get that kind of in the mix together, there's all kinds of things you could do, even outside of the actual storyline itself. You could have a lot of fun with just how the fans perceive it all.
So I anticipate that Paul Vato will be writing part of this comic. I just anticipate that he would have something to do with it. But no, Paul, like when you see a book like this that comes across, that these are characters you obviously know a ton about. These are characters that you have interest in, that you like. You've talked to me a little bit about, like, hey, I love the comedic aspect of Deadpool, and the fact that one of the characters really gets to be a comedian on a regular basis, and it's Deadpool, right? Of all of the ones that are out there, sure, there's some quippy characters that are like that, but this is the mainstream guy that gets to be kind of funny and everything. When you see him get involved in a project like this, how does it feel from your side? Like, you enjoy the entertainment aspect of it. You love the fact that character basis and everything. And then to see it brought into the world with Batman, like how does that come across for you?
I mean, I don't know if saying it makes it more legitimate is the right thing to say, but he's paired up with an iconic character that's been around since the 30s, so I love it. And especially, and like you said, we chatted about it. I love it anytime that the funny guy is also like the superhero, and he's got a very dark sense of humor, which I can relate to. So I love the fact that they paired him up, and kind of like you were saying, me and Brendan, opposites. But how funny would it be to force us to be together in the same world, interact, record us? I mean, this is kind of that same thing where you
is that not the premise of this pod? Just to watch the tension between Paul Vato and
Exactly. Exactly. So we should start, make sure we write all this stuff down, because then this becomes our origin story, me and Brendan, but we're forced to work together. And I love that. And that's what makes a good scene. Even when we improvise, it's, if you choose high status, I'm going to choose low status, and vice versa, because it makes for very interesting scenes when you see people of two different statuses interact, and how do they solve this problem that's ahead of them. So I love it. This is right up my alley, and I can't wait to dive into this whole series. So yeah, thanks for sharing it, man. That's great.
I think this will be fun. This is a must get for you guys. Obviously, get down to your local LCS. For those that you guys are wondering what that is, that's your local comic book shop. Head on down, pick up a copy of this. You never know where these type books will end up down the road too. This could be a very valuable book down the road. It could be very novelty. It depends on really what the writing and how it kind of spins, but definitely one of the ones that I think that people are definitely going to be looking for. Now, Deadpool stays alive in the next book, and that one is, Brendan?
Deadpool Wolverine #9. This one's comic key is the first appearance of Legacy 2.0 powered Wolverine. That's in the solicit. I don't know what Legacy 2.0 powered Wolverine means, but it says the Horseman of Apocalypse. The shocking reveal of the summer pays off as Wolverine and Deadpool serve as horsemen of the mutant apocalypse. If you missed this revelation, it's time to catch up here with issue #9.
So this is kind of crazy because Apocalypse is... he's very calculated as a villain, right? And everything he does always has a reason. And so who knows what this is? And I like, Erik's telling us that maybe this is like a legacy virus, right? Which is really interesting because when you think about that from a standpoint, the one thing we know about Wolverine is his mind from time can be corrupted, right?
Yep.
And he can be encouraged to act out in a certain way, be it, which is what's made him such polar to the X-Men world, right? Because for every time he goes and he does everything the way that the X-Men's, the X-Men do, he turns around and kills, 25 people when he wasn't supposed to kill anybody, right? So he's always, against the grain, always kind of can be, coerced into something. However, he always seems to take a moment, decompress, get logic back, and then, try to make the right decisions after that. But look, at the end of the day, the guy's a mercenary. Deadpool's a mercenary, and Apocalypse being able to maybe mind control those guys or something along the lines of getting them to do things for him. I just, I'm not surprised to see this to be a type storyline that we get out of this. The only problem that I have with this, and this is just me, is I really feel like the Deadpool Wolverine comic book line, they just keep trying to grasp at something they think people will like.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just like trying to throw up a whole new idea. It's literally like the book of resets. It's almost like they should just do like, hey, we're doing 3 books at a time, and each one just has a different idea until you like.
Well, if they lean into that and they do it well by like acknowledging it, because you've got this character that breaks the fourth wall all the time, and like if he turns around, he's quipping jokes about it, and it works, for this character. But it does. I mean, this has got to be seriously. We're talking about Deadpool so much, and the thing that I like Deadpool as a character, and I like most of the Deadpool stories that I read, but I won't read most of them because I just get so annoyed that there are so many of them out there that it just starts to weigh on me. That's like, well, I've read this. Now there's 15 other ones this week to get caught up on all of them, and I just can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And a big reason, a real thing, right, Brett?
Yeah. And a big thing about Deadpool is that Deadpool is such a break, or at least was ideally such a break from the norm. If Deadpool then becomes the norm, it kind of ruins a bit of the fun, because now all the characters who aren't Deadpool and actually are a little bit more traditional in that sense, those now seem like the alternative. So it's one of those weird things where kind of everything gets skewed and things get kind of, flipped on top of their head, as often happens in pop culture and in art and entertainment, right? I mean, see, we talk about in sports all the time how that seems to be the case and how history repeats itself and then things revert back to the way they are before being reset again. But it's also interesting because we're at a point now where the X-Men are probably at a bit of a resurgence, right? We see it with the Fantastic Four for a long time. A lot of it has to do with the movies, because since Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, Disney, they didn't have the rights to those iconic characters. They still have to share the rights for Spider-Man. But now that they have the deal with Sony, they can do things with Spidey. Fantastic Four, say what you want about the box office return, but the critical reception was very good. And that essentially is the launching point for the next big crossover event. And that crossover event is going to be a big deal. Why? Because of the X-Men. Everything they're doing, whether it be cinematically, comic book wise, cartoons on Disney Plus, whatever it may be, is really going back to the X-Men. And one of their most iconic villains is Apocalypse. And that's why I think you're going to see a demand for Apocalypse, Mr. Sinister, right? Like a lot of the Bolivar Trask, like a lot of these popular X-Men villains that aren't necessarily Magneto, you're going to see really a premium for them now, because now that's kind of the norm. But I agree with you guys. If the Deadpool, if the aspects of the Deadpool character and the comic book elements almost permeate a little bit too much, not only does it ruin the fun, but it ruins the whole point of Deadpool, which is to be this massive departure from everything that is normally comic booky. But if everything that is normally comic booky becomes just that, then I think it's almost jumping the gun or jumping the shark, if you will.
Well, and I think about this like as sports, right? So in sports, you have seasons and they somewhat overlap, but not often. And when they do overlap, it's because one is building to it and one's at a precipice, right?
Yeah.
So with that being the case, this is the one point that I'll make on this fatigue with Deadpool.
Yeah.
And that is, it has heavily affected Venom. And the reason being is because Venom itself, Venom is the other one of these characters.
Yes.
Right. And so you usually will have Deadpool here and then Deadpool's gone. There's no Deadpool, but we've got Venom
to fill the niche. Right.
Well, the problem is that you're running so much Deadpool now and you're having so much of that. It's like, okay, who's going to have the better writing? Well, the better joke telling is always going to come out of Deadpool. He's just always going to be a little more funny. Whereas it's a little more shock factor with him and a little less shock factory with Venom. And I think that really has affected this, potential line to where now our reboot that we're about to get is that Noel's going to get pulled back into the Venom line because now they want to bring Noel and get back to that darker side. So they're having to take Venom to the more darker spot, then to the comedic spot, because look, there's 13 different books, all current titles, all coming out on a regular basis that are Deadpool. I think it hurts some of those type characters when
and
you're
at their
ongoing
core,
with this character for so long.
Because at their core, they're anti-heroes. Anti-heroes work because, or anti-heroes work because they're, again, a departure from what is normal. If they become normal and the traditional heroes then become the new de facto anti-heroes, it's all flipped on its head. That's why the thing with Superman in the movie is actually pretty prominent. Maybe kindness is the new punk rock. There was a point in time where if you said Superman was punk rock, people would laugh at you. But with the way society is geared now, he kind of is. He's like an alternative culture. And at one point, Venom and Deadpool and all these guys, they were the alternative culture. Now they're becoming like the main pillar of it. And I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I'm more so curious to see, though, if that gets kind of out of hand, where do you go to recalibrate? And as you said, Steve, maybe we're going to get to that point where they're going to have to.
Well, in the world of DC, what you're talking about is literally happening. And this next book is a really good example of it. And that is the next book that we have is Wonder Woman number 25, Brendan.
Yeah, we've gotten the 5-minute warning like 6 times. So I'm trying to get through these last 2 quickly as possible.
So Wonder Woman number 25.
What?
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. I completely lost audio of Brendan there. So I was just going to try to pick up for him, but
take 2.
Brendan's definitely. So this book number 25, this is going to be the first appearance of Matriarch. It's a harbinger of death. Brendan, are you with us?
All right. You guys keep freezing up. And
Same here.
After days of searching through a mouse-infested world, Wonder Woman finally locates the lost Etta Candy and fugitive Amazon Emily. Little does she know they're hiding a tiny harbinger of death who will change Diana's fate forever. You won't want to miss the first appearance of the Matriarch in this oversized anniversary issue that will set the stage for all Wonder Woman stories to come. That is a bold statement, setting the stage for all Wonder Woman in the future, they say.
Well, I think they're having to do a little bit of a reset because they saw that with the Absolute line, how people really took to this dark side of Wonder Woman. And I look, usually where there's success, that's where they want to be. And I just feel like they're gearing Wonder Woman to be a little more angry, a little bit more Bruce Wayne-ish, a little bit more of that type of character, because for a long time there, it seemed like everything they were doing with Wonder Woman was always like, it's always a positive thing. Everybody wants to follow her. I think Brendan had said something like, she's a little bit of country, a little bit rock and roll, something along those lines that are the case. But again,
pop star.
I will point this out. This cover's incredibly underwhelming. And this entire Wonder Woman run of books to this point, I don't really find any of the covers I'm like, oh, that's such a great Wonder Woman cover. They finally there's no, she looks irritated at best, which Paul, I know you threw your hands up because
this supposed to be pensive? Is she supposed to be
it's more of this is the look that Paul Vato gets from almost any female he has a conversation with.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then I do turn them just like this harbinger of death. I end up flipping them to it starts out kind of kidding, and then all of a sudden know that they really are angry. So it's I have that. That's my superpower. this turning women against me. I don't know how I do it, but I do it pretty well.
It's amazing to watch. I've been at the Nerd Bar with Paul Vato, and I've seen this in action. Because, like, you know, I'm happily married, and so I'll be like, you know, we're having a conversation or whatever, like, oh, have you met Paul? And then I walk away, and everything is great when I leave, and I turn back 10 seconds later, and Paul's getting slapped. He's getting drinks thrown at him. Like, it's amazing how quickly he can turn a room.
Well, for the record, though, my wife is also happily married. You know, so let's not bring our wives into this. But yeah. It's
slippery slope.
You know, I'm not married. My wife is married, so that's. Hey, I made my mom laugh. Okay, all right.
I love it. Well, you know, and in fairness too, Brendan Allen is only speaking, you know, kindly because right now he's within striking distance. So he knows that, you know, hands-on could be an approach here, and he would avoid that. You know, speaking of someone that was hands-on, you know, we're coming up on an anniversary of one of the biggest franchises on TV of, you know, movies with Fast and the Furious. And obviously Vin Diesel is a lead guy for that, but he had to have a start somewhere, right? And when we see this, I think all of us immediately think back to Vin Diesel pitching Street Sharks. And the next book this week, Street Sharks #1.
Unreal.
You know, for this series, if they don't do a Vin Diesel like variant cover, they're missing out on a huge market.
Oh, for sure.
No doubt.
Because that footage, everybody knows the footage we're talking about. It's Vin Diesel. He's like 17 years old. I don't even know. He's a baby, but he's sitting there and he's just having so much fun playing with the Street Sharks on a table. And it was done for New York Toy Fair, I think 1996. But we can't show the footage because of copyright, but you guys should definitely look it up. Vin Diesel, Street Sharks. It is hilarious. But also, like, I just love when people enjoy things. So you could tell that he got that gig because he went to the audition. They put the toys in front of him and he just smashed the shit out of them. And they're like, that's the energy that we want for our ad campaign. So the solicit for this one says, the first Street Sharks comic in more than 20 years brings you extreme stories and a fantastic time. I love the pun. Don't call it a comeback. We've been here for years. The four Bolton brothers were happy playing sports and meeting babes, but when a run-in with a mad scientist turned them into giant sharks, they only got cooler. Kick some serious fin with Ripster, the great white head of the pack, Streaks, the rollerblading ladies man, Jab, the hammerhead who loves using his noggin, and Big Slamoo, the whale shark with the whale-sized muscles on their newest adventure. The solicit's so long. I'm going to stop there. It's about 60 more words. Yeah.
I think let me simplify it for everybody. These guys got turned into sharks. They kick the crap out of everybody. It's constantly fighting. Yeah. None of it makes sense. None of it is physically anything that in real world ever could be a thing. The fish can't breathe out of water. They can't hear. I mean, you could go down the list, but what I will tell you is that this was one of the short ran toy lines and series from the 80s and 90s that has continued to keep fan interest. Whereas you've had some of the other ones that I really loved, but unfortunately just don't have the buzz. The Silverhawks, Visionaries, all of those cartoons at that time, all of those that came out have not been able to sustain and live over time. And it seems like every 4 or 5 years, there's a reboot on a toy line or some type of art line or, you know, something to the extent of with the Street Sharks. It's time for them to come back. I hope they really modernize this. I think that's going to be a big thing for it. And look, Paul Vato, he's a poker shark. So he's hoping that they can bring his hedgehog character into this, right? So I think, have you already sent that request to be included in this series? Is that what I understand, Paul?
Yeah, half shark, half hedgehog.
Right.
So, man,
all Paul Vato.
Right up my alley.
All Paul Vato.
Up his alley.
It was so funny. Look, I think this is fun. I think it's going to be one of those things that you could get some new readers into this. I don't know that you'll get a ton new readers as much as it's going to be the nostalgic guys. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that we're on the right path here. And look, we started this book talking about pitchmen, right? Because ultimately that's what we had was, look, when that guy is on TV and people are talking, and talking to him. And you even saw recently, like on some of the Fast and Furious stuff, how, when he's having discussions with fans and he's talking, he like really captures people. And so, from an endorsement standpoint and everything, that's important. And we have our own guy for that. And Paul, right now, it's your 30 seconds of glory, Paul, as you get to pitch your ass off.
Oh my goodness. Well, I want to invite everyone to come over to my school community, SKOOL. That's where all the action is happening. Introduce yourselves. And I have different categories, whether you're into podcasting or acting. We can share acting tips. We can do that. I'll let you know next time I'm slated to be on TV or film, a nice little cheeky announcement. So come over to my school community. I'm by the time this is out, you can just go to vatoslocos.uk. Don't ask why. vatoslocos.com is taken. But vatoslocos.uk, that will take you right to my school community. Sign up. And then while you're at it, why not buy some Vato coin? But in the meantime, see me over at the school community. Hey, hello? Wait, there's Vato coin, Parse rum. Hello? Kama Susia? Hello? Is that, guys, are we still, yeah, we're still recording? Just go to paulvato.com. You know, you can find all my stuff there. These guys got rid of me. People want to hear about this. Where's Frank?